Okay.
Make some progress on it. All right.
Now the attendees will come in. They're earning.
So Eddie doesn't count toward quorum.
No, Eddie doesn't count towards.
And Ritu also does not, correct?
Do you count
Okay, you
towards
want to
quorum?
sign it?
No.
You count towards quorum?
Oh, look at this. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
I didn't know that. Steve.
An entrance.
Well, let's get right into it. We have two August guests. I thought we'd have one, but now we have, oh yeah, that's the updated one. So we have, let's get started. I know we have some other members coming. Let me start by saying we welcome Commissioner Tricia here tonight. So you guys behave, you troublemakers. You know, Shirley.
Ten
yeah,
cents on the
yeah,
table.
Yeah, please restrain
embarrass
yourself,
us.
pretend. Okay, so we have, welcome everyone to the May meeting of the Parks and Waterfront Committee for Community Board 2. There's Chris, that's great. We thank you for attending in person when you can. What am I saying? Oh, we have two topics tonight. What's that? Two topics tonight. The first one is actually, I guess, why you guys came. We have two. The first topic, we have a conversation with the Department of Parks and Recreation, and we have some representatives from the Jefferson Market Garden on an operating agreement that's in discussion between the two entities. And then we have our new friend Lexi, who's going to talk to us about Downing Street Playground as our second topic. Before I turn it over to you, Commissioner, if that's okay, let me just remind everyone, we met with the committee from Jefferson Market Garden, obviously located at Greenwich between 6th and 10th Street. It's a garden back in April of 2024. It's a garden that's managed by a volunteer board. It's a nonprofit organization. They are registered as the village committee for the Jefferson Market area. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is your 50th year. So the big party, did you get invited? No, nor I haven't, no invitation yet. All right.
You'll get an invite.
All right, thanks. Pressure. Their mission statement is to provide stewardship for a beautiful garden where the community and visitors can enjoy tranquil surroundings in our hectic urban environment. That's still true as it was 50 years ago. Thank you. You came to that. Susan and Michelle came to that meeting as well, along with Zach, who's unable to make it tonight. When we met last time, there was a discussion around the licensing or the permits with the city, and it turned out we couldn't find said permit. And so I was talking to Chief of Staff Steve at the time back then, and he said, "Oh, you know, let us come talk to you." And then I talked to the commissioner, and she said, "Let me come talk to you." I think the city is in an interesting time now with budgets and all that, and so there are some, I think, pragmatic attempts to manage things as efficiently as possible. Speaking to our commissioner, and she said, "Well, let me just come and explain it to people." So I don't want to spin it anyway. I just wanted to turn it over to you and allow you to talk about the status of things.
Sure. So I thank you everybody for coming, all the folks who are on Zoom. It's really good to see you all. It's good to be in person. And you already know this, but you know, for many years I was doing the same exact gig, except on the Upper East Side. I was chair of my own Parks Committee in CB8. So it just kind of always feels good to kind of be in person and be all crammed in a small public service room, like all sitting here trying to talk things through and you know, it just feels like kind of home in so many ways. Yeah. And I want to just say, if it's okay with you, I know that there's like a lot of things going on in CB2, and there's a lot of like new information that's coming out around parks, around budget and things like that. And I would love to kind of just like acknowledge that there's a lot of stuff, and I'm happy to also answer questions, at least some basic questions, what I can answer around that sort of stuff too. But to kind of get right into your first topic, Jefferson Market Park. This was new to me when I came into my role here. And so to learn a little bit more about this garden, I should have said Jefferson Market Garden, excuse me, and to learn a little bit about its history and what the current state of it is. Rich, you did a really good job. Essentially, this is a longstanding community garden space that has been really overseen and stewarded by a volunteer group for years. It is probably maybe the most beautiful garden I have ever stepped into in the borough of Manhattan, if I were to be honest with you. I'm trying to think about another garden space I'm trying to think if there's any more space that I've seen with volunteers that has been so kind of carefully and delicately and kind of intentionally planted and cared for in that way. And I'm struggling at the moment to think of something like that. But when we came through and started looking at the history and kind of popping the hood up to see, well, what's the structures here? It turns out that we actually don't have, to my knowledge, at least right now, from my, let's say, month-long research on this, we don't actually have an agreement in place. So I spoke with this group of volunteer gardeners who have done an extremely beautiful and wonderful job caring for this space. And we kind of talked about, why go through an agreement in the first place? And, to answer that first question, why formalize something? Well, formalizing relationships between our agency and whatever group is caring for that space, it protects the group, it protects us, it manages expectations, it makes sure that everybody is held to the same kind of standard across the board. It allows for everybody to have a little bit more clarity around kind of expectations and rules. And that has nothing to say, I really don't think that this garden group has kind of done anything nefarious, but I think it protects everybody and kind of sets everybody's expectations. In every other case where we have a community garden, we have an agreement. And this just happens to be one where I think it's been such a long-standing piece that we've just never kind of formalized it. So I can tell you that, after looking at this and seeing that there's no agreement in place, the agency is now in good faith kind of engaging with our incredible stewards here and trying to formalize that. And for all of those just good governance reasons, it just feels like the right thing to do. I will say, since I've been here for a year, I've only seen maybe 2 agreements signed thus far. And just to manage your own expectations when it comes to these types of agreements and any kind of agreement between an agency and any sort of group, that's going to take some time. It normally takes a while. You should probably expect a year or so, to be honest with you. That happens for a lot of reasons. One is just we're a slow moving vessel, but 2, by the time, in any case, you would get we have a template agreement. We send that template agreement over to our stewards. The stewards look at it. We tell the stewards, hey, have a lawyer look at it. Their board has to look at it. They have to vote on it. Never ever is a signed thing right there. People have questions. They want to mark things up. They want to have those conversations. We go back and forth. And generally we have a very small but mighty legal team. So that just takes a lot of time to do. But I can tell you that in good faith, we're starting those conversations. And I think that we're going to ultimately, I really have high hopes that we end in a good place here. Now, so just trust that that's starting in good faith, and can give you updates along the way. And I can talk a little bit more about that. It would be easy enough to say that the agency is talking to our stewards on this, but I will just flag that for community gardens, that gets a little bit more complicated, but not in a bad way, just there's a third player in all of this, which is Green Thumb. And I'm actually grateful for this topic coming up because, as you all know, I'm still new to the agency. And so it really gave me an opportunity to kind of learn a little bit more about Green Thumb along the way and learn about how our agency really defines park versus playground versus garden versus plaza or anything else like that. And really, when it comes to Jefferson Market Garden, and when any green thumb garden, we define that as a space where we have volunteers who are really doing that gardening effort. It's not the Parks Department who's doing it. Volunteers have the ability to choose the plantings. They help really manage that space in a very hands-on way. And Parks really does not play a formal maintenance role there. And that's typically the case where you see. And that's kind of why we have the Green Thumb program. So it's going to just require kind of that third party coming in, which is also just going to mean another person's schedule to coordinate and have those conversations with. Maybe I'll stop right there for a second just to talk and see if anybody has questions about that process of formalizing kind of relationship and like kind of formalizing and bringing in our Jefferson market stewards into the Green Thumb program. Do people have questions about that part?
Yeah, can you, I'm sorry, can I go first just to clarify?
Because you're the chair, yeah.
We prepped, the trade-off is there are couple options, right?
Oh, yes.
Stewardship. There, Green Thumb is one.
Mhm.
Green Thumb doesn't report up through you, they report through, remind me how they report.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So, and I should say, also would love to hear, I should have started this way, Rich, and then I just, really I should have just brought notes, but I decided to wing it. So I probably should have started by saying that I'm also all ears and listening to this community board, this committee, about any sort of concerns or things that you'd like us to like keep in mind when we do these kind of have these conversations. I want to thank the gardeners.
Yeah,
here,
I should.
because I really do think that like really and truly my recommendation both to this board and to our gardeners is that it's very clear to me, and that's my social worker side, just clear to me that like a relationship, a kind of more robust relationship needs to happen here. So I'm like happy that you guys are here. I'm happy that we're kind of having this and starting early in these kind of conversations around this, and I'm happy to come back around it. So when you talk about formalizing relationships with our agency, there are a couple ways that you do that, but there's only a few, to tell you the truth. One formalized way that happens is like a conservancy group where a conservancy takes over a park. Manhattan has this reputation thinking that we have a million conservancies and millions of these agreements, but in truth, I have over 400 parks in Manhattan and I have like 6 agreements. There's not that many, but in the kind of big conservancy way, you see a friends group that ultimately evolves into something that's a little bit more established. They create a board, that you see that board starting to take on bigger projects where they start to take on maybe like fundraising capital projects. They start funding things like exterminators or gardeners or really kind of bigger maintenance components to a park. Eventually they grow in size. The Parks Department gets to rely on them for maintaining larger aspects of a park space. That park space though is ultimately a park, meaning that it's open, all days of the year. Parks generally still maintains and does some elements of that stuff. So we kind of dictate plantings, we dictate exterminators, we dictate a few other kind of components to that sort of thing. And eventually we realized that it would be good to formalize that relationship on a high level. That's what you see with Madison Square Park. That's what you see with Riverside Park. That's what you see with the Battery. That's what you see for Central Park. That's what you see for, well, that list is kind of shortening, but we'll talk a little bit more about Washington Square Park, I know next month. And then Ripa, Randall's Island has that type of relationship. And I'm sure maybe Carl Schurz Park has a light relationship now with that one, but that's a light version. But essentially that's where you see kind of those big formalized relationships there. There are some downsides to that. And one is that those types of agreements take years to execute. That is not an easy thing to do. It takes years. I mean, the last one that we just signed probably took 6 years to kind of go through its system. There's
in those cases, in those
Yeah.
cases, just for clarity, the conservancy becomes actually the operator of the park,
Yes.
not just a friends group.
in so many ways. In those cases, like it's so many components. There's a lot of it's really out of parks' hands in so many ways because Oftentimes there's a concession in that space, and then some of that concession revenue goes to that conservancy in so many ways and goes to the operation of the park. It can mean OMB gets involved, the Office of Management and Budget, because that can sometimes mean less money is going into the city coffers and more going to a specific group. There's just a lot of complications in it, and it takes a tremendous amount of work and time and effort to do that piece. We don't do it very frequently. I kind of always battle with my other borough commissioners because they think that Manhattan is the land of conservancy agreements when actually there's only a few. There's only a few, and when you consider all, the 398 other parks that we have, that sort of thing is there. So that's one route.
There are lots of conservancies.
There's a lot of groups that call themselves conservancies. There's friends groups, alliances, conservancies, partnerships, you name it, trusts, you name it. Everybody kind of calls themselves different things. Stewards, there's every single thing you can imagine. And we're grateful for all of them. But in those kind of very formalized license agreement sort of thing, there's a handful, and they take quite a long time to establish. That's the park route. The other route is there's a very kind of similar and very unique route for historic houses, of which we have 6. So, and I would dare you to name all 6 of them, but we can do that later. But one of them is in CB2.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, we know that.
Oh, the merchant.
Good. Let's see, you're cheating. You're not supposed to say anything. Merchant's House. First. So those also are run by a private entity, a nonprofit organization. Those are very specific license agreements of a different kind, but kind of similar in so many ways. And then you have your Green Thumb pieces. And Green Thumb, like I said, it's a much easier path, and that's intentional, right? This is mostly volunteer. This is all volunteer gardeners. These are all people who are from the neighborhood. I was actually reading the Green Thumb, they call it the Green Thumb Bible, which is online, and I was just kind of educating myself on all things Green Thumb, and they do specifically say, like, this is for people living in the neighborhood who are trying to grow plants and trying to have a relationship with the soil, having a relationship with parkland, taking care of this space. It's a wonderful kind of component to our overall park portfolio that frankly is a little uneven. You see a lot of it in CB3, a tremendous amount in CB3. Right. You see a lot of it in CB11, East Harlem. You don't have that many here, and I have 0 in my neighborhood, not even one.
Vacant lots.
Yeah, so those spaces where you have that community garden component, I think are, it really is, they're quite spectacular. So with those, the agreements are much lighter. There's a template. We have Green Thumb, which really oversees that. Green Thumb does not report directly to the borough. They are a citywide organization overseeing all of our community gardens across the entire city. They're run by a gentleman named Carlos Martinez, who's a great guy, and I foresee in the future Carlos coming to CB2 with me to kind of talk more about the Green Thumb program in a little bit more depth. But overall, we start with a template agreement. It's much shorter. It needs to get renewed annually. What it means to be a Green Thumb is, again, it takes care of all those kind of liability things. It takes care of all of those sort of like just oversight pieces to it. And also has a few, it also just means that like Green Thumb can help, like if there ever were a question about the garden, if there ever were a question about, let's just say, and I'm not saying that there is, but you can tell me if there is, but if you had concerns about like a garden not being open at a certain time or a community garden not being open at a certain time, you can of course reach out to the garden group directly, but you can also loop in Green Thumb, and Green Thumb would have that formalized relationship, and they could also like say like, oh, we should, we can help moderate, we can help mediate in between and that sort of thing. That's that component to it. I see a question from Frederica. Hi, Frederica. I wish you were here in person. Do you want me to answer? Is it true the Green Thumb program and it said gardens only be open 20 hours a week? Yes.
No.
So wait, no?
Minimum.
A minimum. So it's a minimum. So there's a minimum to that. It's 20 hours a week as minimum through the garden season, which I'm forgetting. Forgive me. Do you remember the exact months? Let's just say it's like spring to fall, something like that.
I think it's April.
April to October there. So there is there, I would, I owe Carlos a couple questions. One of my questions was like wanting to know if we kind of see the range of like gardens, how many of them are on the like above that range versus below that range sort of thing. So I'm happy to give you to like kind of do more. I asked myself a question already, Frederica, but I can't answer. But yes, that's the piece. And I will say that to my knowledge, the Jefferson Market Group is already kind of exceeding that 20-hour piece. I think that we can always talk. But if you're interested in hours, I think I would love to hear more about kind of specific concerns that are brought up.
Yeah, there are a couple things you talked about there. There's opening hours.
Yep.
There's hours open.
Mhm.
There's opening processes, right? Of who opens the park each day.
Mhm.
That differs between the two, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, yes. So so with community gardens, that's the community, there are some specifics here. And I can also share this with you in an email, just so you have the actual language if I'm misremembering something, but hours need to be posted on park signage, and so the community should have expectations, should be able to manage their expectations as to when the garden should be open. They are open and closed by the gardening group. The gardening group, one of the other requirements is that like the gardening group should be open, like in some way to the public. So like if somebody wants to be a member of it or something like that, there should be an open process to it. I don't believe you can charge for membership of something like that. And you can have a wait list if it's too big or whatever, but I can give you more details on that. They are pretty explicitly spell out some of the expectations.
But yeah, so that when you use the word community garden, were you using that?
I'm talking about-
with green thumb?
Yes, I am. Excuse me, and thank you for that.
Clarifying for, and a couple others, just before we get in staffing, there was a difference in staffing, right?
So right now, I mean, yeah, we can play this out a little bit. Let's just say, and I don't think that this is the case, but maybe I can be wrong, but let's just say that overwhelmingly, CB2 feels like this should be a park space that should be open all the time, and park should take over treating it like a park. And more so, even though it's Jefferson Market Garden, but like you just say like you want to do that. I would probably go back to our commissioner. I talked to her about it, and let's just say she says, okay, we're gonna move and treat it like a park. It would be, I would feel like that would probably, I mean, this is me being a little bit more of a personal side, but I do think that would be ultimately the community would lose kind of what's beautiful and special about Jefferson Market Garden, because ultimately my team, my resources would never be able to do what's being accomplished in that garden right now. We would never put in those flowers. We would never be putting in those plantings. We would never be able to maintain it to that degree. It would just not ever be that gorgeous and manicured. Unfortunately, I wish we could, but we have like I said, we have 400 plus properties, and in general, when you open things up like that, when you keep it kind of open on that side, you'll see a lot of abuse of those plants and a lot of things like that. That's kind of why, and again, why there are like community garden spaces that do kind of limit that in so many ways. You see, like you give the plants time to rest, you give those lawns time to rest, you kind of more contain like some of those pieces to it. That's the kind of components to it. So
Raising of money.
sorry, the raising of money?
Yeah.
Yes, community garden groups are allowed to raise money. I have some follow-up questions for Carlos on this. They're not, we do have restrictions on renting out that space for events, but you are allowed to fundraise. I actually don't know if it's specific to the location, if you can fundraise in that. I have some follow-up questions here, but suffice to say, at this point, what I would say is that when you are in the Green Thumb Community Garden Program, there are all of these things are kind of laid out for you, and we do hold those expectations.
Okay, yeah. Let me call some people in the room. Shirley.
Yeah. Okay. So I should really know this. I think I've forgotten. So the Parks Department, in other words, is the umbrella for all of these.
Yeah, it's a big, yeah.
And would you just call them programs in the Parks
I
Department?
call them departments. like departments, really.
Departments.
Yeah.
Small ones?
Yeah, it's kind of like, the best way to describe it is, well, I oversee the borough team and I'm very grateful for that role and so most closely I work with the Manhattan operations team that's comprised of a little over 400 people in the off season, and we jump up with seasonal hires to 800 or so people who are those are the folks who are really opening and closing and raking and taking out the garbage and doing all those things that our shops team and all those other pieces. Recreation, though, in our rec centers is actually a citywide division. So they work closely with us. There's a chief of recreation for Manhattan, but he doesn't actually report to me. He reports to our overall deputy commissioner who oversees all public programs and recreation. So similarly, our Green Thumb program, which is all under the umbrella of Parks, they have a Parks, Carlos has a Parks email address, and we see each other at holiday parties and all the other stuff. But he oversees the citywide Green Thumb program. And that's really, I think, I could speculate because I've only been here for a year, but I think it's also about just sharing resources. Not all boroughs have the same amount of Green Thumb or of community gardens. I think Brooklyn and Manhattan has the lion's share of the community gardens. It's easier to kind of allocate those resources. And when you are part of the Green Thumb program, you get mulch, you get tools, you get also access to more plantings and free programming stuff. There's like a whole thing that you're kind of welcomed into the family in so many ways and that like sort of thing. And so all of those things, it's a citywide department. So we work closely together, but they do have like a kind of citywide operation versus Manhattan, where I just really focus. I only care about my 12 community boards and Randall's Island.
Follow-up. Funding.
Yes.
How does that work?
So community groups generally fund themselves. The community gardener groups, they are responsible for. We don't certainly give them any funding. We give them like mulch and resources and things like that. I thought that was me. But no, they generally are responsible for fundraising, and they put funds into the garden, back into their garden. Yeah.
My notes, I wrote, if you're Green Thumb, you get mulch.
You do get mulch.
That's
Sometimes.
Actually,
Yeah.
we could turn that into, I had a question
that,
about the template and governance and reporting.
Mhm.
Because that's the area that interests me the most. Does the template require any sort of best practices in terms of reporting, governance structure?
Yeah, I have some follow-up questions. So we do talk about like bylaws and meeting minutes and some level of like making sure that that's like open and like shared widely and publicly accessible. I don't actually know if we get into the specifics of like, should it be posted on a website or like, how does it get regularly reported? But I will just tell you like, and I'm sure our gardeners can vouch for this, because I essentially said though, and I'm biased because I come from the world of community boards. I just said, I would really recommend that somehow our Jefferson Market gardeners kind of build in some regular points of contact with this community board. It's just the best practice. It's my best practice in general. It's why I came here in person. It's why when you ask me to come, I'm always going to show up, or I will try to show up at the next time. If I can't show up for that time for whatever reason, there's just some, and this is, again, my own opinion, not the city's position on this, but the community board's never going to go anywhere. You are all like written into the charter as like really our point of contact, especially for an agency. We will always be working with community board 2 and others. And so I really do think that like we got to see the forest through the trees here. We got to build as many points of contact in as possible, like as many opportunities for a relationship to grow between you and any community garden group, frankly, every steward of the park. The way you have a relationship with Will Morrison, the way you have other relationships with other park stewards or garden stewards, it's just best practice in my book to have kind of as much robust kind of points of contact, communication. There should be no surprises ever. That's kind of like what my goal is here. So I'm looking into more about what we formally require. And I definitely hear your concerns around kind of like formally kind of mandating like some level of transparency. But I don't have an answer on what we actually formally kind of require for that side. I do know that we talk about bylaws, we do talk about kind of like the structure and making sure that that structure is in place, and we do check in on those things.
Thank you. I wanted to offer some history that informs this question. Years ago, there was a conservancy proposed for Washington Square Park.
Mhm.
And surprisingly to me, there was a lot of controversy over it for a while. And the controversy centered around this question of how do you protect public space from having undue influence by a private group?
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't think that was going to happen, but it's a valid question, right? Like who gets to choose what the tulips are and who gets to, have a birthday party in there, whatever. So the question we asked ourselves, well, how can we protect the confidence in the group and the public? What kind of practices can protect that? And there was a feeling that if you share on your website your financials, your board, your bylaws, that really goes a long way to ensuring that no one is ever accusing a group of having nefarious practices. But if someone decided, if evil Simon came in and decided he wanted to take, Edward
How did you pick? this
came in and decided he wanted to take over, that there's a governance structure and a communication structure that's in place that would prevent anything nefarious from happening. That's something that we've just asked the garden to do for a while. They haven't done it yet, but I'm hoping that the conversation that you guys will all have will lead to that, because we love what you do and just want to have that public protection.
I don't know if you want them to talk at all.
Yeah, just before we turn it over, just in the room, we'll let you guys speak. I'm sorry, we didn't communicate that. When past commissioners have attended, they've always brought cookies. I should have told you.
I think I'm coming back next month, so I'll bring the cookies next month.
Steve brought cookies. You remember when you brought cookies?
I think,
Cookies?
A long time ago. It's been a while.
I think it was donuts.
I think CB9, there used to be a board member who brought pizza.
Oh, that was.
Gotta get in the charter, right?
Yeah.
In the charter.
Well, Partnership for Parks used to bring brownies.
Oh, no.
Anyway, yeah, there was, so you talked about the transparency on the financing. Oh, you talked about the garden, and I should have started with the great appreciation everyone has for the beauty of it. I forgot to say that. But the funding of the gardener is done in the current model by the group, yes.
So Parks does not fund any staff for Jefferson Market Park. This is why Jefferson Garden, sorry, I'm so sorry. Jefferson Market Garden, apologies. We really, this is something where we've looked at this. We don't fund any plantings right now. We don't fund any sort of the irrigation work. We don't fund any of the maintenance over there. We do not open or close that. We do not clean it. We do not deal with rats in that park.
Rats.
Don't start with me.
We currently do not do anything here. This is also why, when I was looking at this, I'm looking at the history, and I think I said to you, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, like chances are it's a duck. Right now Parks is extremely out. The agency has no staff resources allocated to this space. We have no, this is a space that has a 50-year history of being stewarded by a community neighboring group. They go through extreme lengths to kind of cultivate the land themselves. They pick out the plantings, they care for those plantings, they do all of those sort of irrigation, hand watering, which is insane, but Susan does that. The hand watering piece to this, they kind of do all those things, the pruning pieces to this, the rats, all those other things. That's all taken care of by the Parks Department, or by this steward group right now. Again, our agency we do those things, but we certainly don't. We are all about trying to standardize those plantings, the maintenance, the extermination, all of those things, so that I can stretch my resources in every park. So you lose all of those kind of unique and special kind of extremely sensitive plants and touches there.
Before we go to more questions, let me turn it over to Michelle and Susan, just as part of the presentation. And
So if you're gonna present, I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt,
please.
but they're not gonna be able to hear you online unless you're.
I can say- And I'm not saying presentation, just any comments you want to pass along. Big goods, not big goods. Remember Castro was quite the baker.
So as you mentioned, this is our 50th anniversary, and we are going to be having a special benefit in September. As was mentioned, we do not get any financial funding from the city, so we have to raise all the money. And we basically raise enough every year to cover what needs to be paid for the coming year. The majority, and we mentioned this before when we were here last year, but our budget is around 215,
Yeah.
230 if you include in-kind contributions. We've had organizations give us like the bulbs in the spring, so if you added up that cost. The majority of those of that money comes from donations. We get about 40 grand in grants. And last year we had 14,000 from events, which are the weddings that we have in the garden, but the majority of it are donations. We have started doing, we've done it 2 years in a row, a joint benefit with the library called Blooms and Books. So between that, and we also send out an annual appeal letter at the end of the year. So that's where we get a nice amount of money from those. And then the rest are people, sending in checks, various amounts, giving donations. So yeah, the events, the grants, and then the donations, that's basically how it's split up. And most of that money, of course, goes to the planting, the materials. We also have a small group of paid garden attendants who sit at the front gate. Just as a reminder, we're open Tuesday through Sunday, 10 to 6. We raised enough money that this summer, in July and August, we're going to be open 10 to 8. We'll be open a couple more hours. We always have 2 paid attendants and a volunteer greeter sitting at the front. They're there to protect the plantings. And I was reading up in the early days in the 70s when the garden first opened. They started this because people were walking in and digging up plants and walking off with them.
Outside my house.
So we have 2 paid attendants and a volunteer, so that if the volunteer can't make it, we always have 2 people who are guaranteed to be there. And they're the ones who open and close the garden. And they're made up of people who live in the neighborhood. They're primarily retirees. So it's a way for them to get a little extra money. And also, which I think is so important, they get a chance to get out of their apartment and go and interact with people, because they're not just sitting there to, protect the garden. They're also there to act as greeters. So, you get people coming in asking, how do I get to the PATH train? Or they're asking about the history of the library, or what is this plant? And so they're there to help with all of those things.
How long a shift do they work? Do
They have a 3-hour shift.
3 hours?
Yeah. And most of them do multiple shifts a week. We currently have, this down. We currently have 12 paid attendants and 17 volunteers who we call gate greeters. We also have 22 gardeners that are volunteers that on Mondays we're closed because that's the day when we do the really heavy work in the garden. And so those volunteers come in and work. That's also the day when we have school groups in. The last 2 weeks in a row, we had 2 groups each Monday, right?
2, yes, and we have the whole schedule out through May for the school groups.
And we also have some senior classes. Those will be on Monday as well. So Monday is kind of our day to do everything else. So when we're raising money, part of our budget went up when we had paid attendance because we have to cover their money.
But you get to have a much more consistent,
Yes.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a huge benefit to the public.
And the other thing too, I want to add is that when when we say we need something, we put it out there for everybody and the community really responds. So it's kind of, they respond to our needs.
Yeah.
Not just to ask. So it's a very, very good relations that we
Like-
built over time.
Yeah, I mean, for example, we have a really big diverse bird population in the garden. And we're actually this year being certified by New York Bird Alliance. They're going to monitor the birds. If there's any bats, that I don't think there
We
are,
did have
but,
one a couple years
oh, really? Okay, so any bats and the insects. And they, in return, are going to do a couple of birding tours and lectures for the public. But, so like, to what Susan said, so one of our neighbors brings over these big wreaths of bird seed for the birds, and she donates these because she likes seeing the birds and wants to make sure that they have food.
And the rats don't eat them?
Well, they're pretty high up.
Oh, good.
The rats, that's another
Excellent question.
other issue.
Question.
So, if I'm gonna just make sure I can hammer home some points, and I was very frank with our stewards the other day. This is not going to be necessarily all heart, stars, and rainbows. I am sure that there are things that our agency and under Green Thumb is going to have concerns with, issues with. I am sure that you will have questions about what we're asking them to sign, and that is why it takes so long. I don't want to sugarcoat it. It is a whole thing. And I will also be very frank with you. I also don't necessarily, I'm not confident in my ability to influence or change or add caveats to these negotiations. Thus far, I've been fairly ornamental in my role in some of these things. So I will just, be frank that it's going to be a little bit of a slog. It will take some time to go through this. I really do believe in community boards. I believe that this group has really the garden's best interest at heart. I believe that like everybody kind of coming together here, we've got to come up with something that's workable here. And I'm excited about this kind of very unique opportunity to provide a little protection for everybody, to make right a ship, so to speak, and just set people up for success for the next 50 years, so that 50 years from now, these questions aren't coming up anymore. And like there's a formalized process and expectations are set, and that sort of piece. It's going to take some time, and I guarantee you that most people here will probably be frustrated at some point in time with like where we stand on this. But I can say that we're starting out this process. I'm sure that before the end of the summer, Carlos from Green Thumb, who's given me the green thumb up to say, let's do it, has said, let's do it, get a tour on the books. So we'll start with tours. I really do kind of think that this board should, I really think that you guys got to build this relationship out. It'll just help everybody through this very tough process, which is just negotiations are always kind of tough.
Okay. Unless you have a question, I was looking at the notes from the last meeting. There is not a Green Thumb relationship already in place because.
No, I don't think there is.
Yeah, okay.
Although I think that this group has been modeling their practices off of Green Thumb. In my research, there's not been a formalized, although maybe that's a caveat with a big caveat, because Steve Simon, who's the holder of all archives in our borough, has pulled up other past documents from the 80s and 70s, and some of them have referenced this garden as part of the Green Thumb.
I found one in particular.
So there may be actually some history here, which would be awesome.
Yeah,
it would just make it would make my life so much easier. But so we're still looking. But in any case, it was well before any of us were here. So we're going to start it in earnest. And if there's something that we can uncover, that's great, because that just kind of streamlines things, and we could just re-up it and revisit it.
Yeah,
Frederica has a question about.
That's Frederica.
Yes, so there is a lot of guidelines around and a lot of issues around, a lot of.
Repeat the question because
Sorry.
not everyone.
I'm sorry. The question is, will the agreement cover how often the garden can be closed for private and or fundraising events? The agreement, yes, I believe, although Frederica, it's very early and I'm not there's been no drafted agreement, so I'm probably speaking a little too early. But yes, Green Thumb does have rules around what fundraising events happen and what events happen in general, and what kind of private uses there are. Yes, they have rules around this.
Frederica, did you have other questions that you haven't written in chat?
Well, I'm interested to hear more from the stewards. And I looked at the calendar. I didn't see any public events. I didn't know whether you just hadn't updated it or perhaps I missed the events. And the other thing was, I wondered if you're keeping track of what the visitation is per year.
Great
Yes.
questions.
Yes.
Yeah, we had that in the notes last
So
time.
as to the events, we are still finalizing the events for this year because we just opened in April. So the calendar will be updated as we get confirmation. That would be things like our music concert series in August. We normally have 3 concerts. We're hoping to do 5 this year. I'm working on adding some educational programming, doing some more talks, which again, it's just, we will post those once we know,
Locked in.
it's locked in. And then the other question,
The bird. We're having the New York City Bird Alliance
yeah, the
come
Bird Alliance will be coming in and those will be posted. And all of these events are free to whoever's interested.
I think our other question was about whether you track your visitation.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We have the clicker and we track it. We do it the
First week of every month. And we have approximately 2,500 to 3,800 visitors per month, per week,
2,500
to 38 per week.
Wow.
Number that.
Wow.
But you don't do it on a weekly basis with your
No,
3
no.
people at the desk there? Because I
No.
imagine it varies a lot with the weather.
It does, it does, and it varies on the month. So tulip time, we always say, is we have a big rush of people because it's springtime, they want to get into the garden and look at, well, let's come up.
Take
over winter,
photos.
Take photos. And then again, during the summer, we get an influx. And yeah, we get quite a few visitors coming through.
Just so I'm clear, so you monitor them just 1 day a week?
No, 1 week, the
One
first week of
week.
every month.
I see, and I think.
And that's how we come up with
Got it, got
the
it.
numbers, and we just estimate for the rest of it.
We,
1 week.
in our last meeting, we talked about 3,000 a week, 30 weeks, but no deduping. So it's not 90,000. We don't know how many unique people it was.
You don't know how many are unique
Yeah.
visitors, yeah, that's hard to.
Well, I guess, that says you a little too much.
I have a question.
Well, then, let's,
Sorry.
was
We
there?
have a lot of repeat visitors, though, as we said, it's an extension of their apartments, it's an extension of their lives. They come in every day, and we know who they are, and they have their seats that they come to. And it's a very important part of their fabric of their lives, and becomes an important part of our lives as well.
Based on, okay, I was just looking, I should have sent around the notes of the last meeting, because there's a lot of good stuff in my copious notes.
Yeah.
I'll do that, yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead, go ahead. Susan.
I just wondered, I've been very frank about describing, that I would love to have more communication from it. I just wonder if that poses difficulties for you. Do you guys feel any reticence in terms of sharing your board membership or your 990s or any of those things? Do those on the face of it just pose any specific problems for
Or
you?
do you mean like with you guys or on our website?
On our website?
So right now on our website, we have all the board members listed. We also have an address for if you wanted to get our
Our filings.
Our
Yeah,
filings every
Yeah,
year.
it's very old. It's
Well-
it's not, there's no new information. There's nothing on your budget, in other words.
No, I meant we have where you can ask
To get our-
the office in New York to get a copy every year of whatever the.
Oh, I
newest
see.
one.
So someone needs to request it.
Yes,
Right, I
yeah,
see.
if they want to see the full filing.
The
of-
Attorney General's office, it's right on there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that this will be a conversation with you guys, but other conservancies and friends groups do post their things on a website, and I don't know if there's any particular reason to feel reticent about it. I don't know if it poses any specific problems for you guys. We don't have to answer that now. I was just curious about.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't know like to what degree that we can compel any group to like do that necessarily, but I definitely hear
Yeah, I don't mean,
All the-
I mean, I understand there might not, the template might not
At least
include it.
first,
I mean,
yeah.
it's just, you know, as
Yeah.
just a relationship thing. I mean, just, you know, I'm looking at like Abington Square and Washington Square Park, of course, which is a bigger park, but other ones, friends of groups also do post a lot of their stuff, and it's just a wonderful way to be able to know what you guys are doing.
I mean, I will be honest, we're, you know, a small group of volunteers. So some of it is finding the time to update the website. Because we do have certain things we want to put on the website. It's just, it's on your to-do list of things to do. And we have been renovating, that's not the right word, updating the website and adding newer information and more stuff on it. And that
That's
will,
great.
we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, that's great.
It'd be great if we had like a dedicated, you know, webmaster who could
Right.
just
Don't,
go in and do everything.
That's a resource Green Thumb can do.
Rich?
That's a nice idea.
Yeah, just say it. Yeah, I think sometimes with the grants, do the grants have any, the people who make the grants or the organizations that make the grants have any requirements associated with them around transparency or reporting? Or-
but like Green Acre Foundation,
Yeah.
you know, we spend the money, they pay it. You know, we have to submit our invoice.
Oh, yeah.
They pay directly, we don't.
That's what I
pay
meant.
Funds on that. And we just received Con Ed
Yeah.
grant last year, which we had to be very specific about what we're purchasing for. And that we don't get a lot. We get 40,000, which in the whole scope of our, you know, 200,000 plus is a piece of it. Not all of it.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I live in the neighborhood and I walk by the garden at least once a day. Oftentimes I try and go in and I'm stymied by the fact that there's only 9 benches. So, and oftentimes, and they're small benches. It has to be a couple who sits in a bench in order to get 2 seatings out of it. Otherwise, it's basically one person. So it's like less than 20 people who could sit down at the park in one time. So I wish there was some way that you could increase the amount of seating by either adding benches or adding paths. I don't know if after 50 years of being in operation with more or less the same configuration, whether you have a master plan for making changes to the park, to the garden, sorry.
Certainly something we could consider.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is there are so many both high-tech and low-tech ways to measure visitors that if with 3 people, 2 of whom are paid at the door, you can't do the clicker more often. You might investigate automating the count in some way, because the numbers that you've given us, it's like a difference of 50% from week to week. And I would think that for your own purposes, you'd be very interested in what kind of visitorship you're generating. Thanks.
Okay. Can we, just because we've jumped around a bit, are there next steps that we can document from today?
Okay, so next steps. So next steps are really, I mean, one, I will be consistently asking you all how like relationship building is going. I think this has been a really great conversation, to be honest with you. But I will look to see that. Parks is a slow moving ship, but we're moving forward. My next steps internally are to get Green Thumb to come out with me to the garden, to learn these guys, to understand what's going on here, and then to get them what our boilerplate template agreement would look like to start. And then to get that over to these guys, they get as much time as needed to start to review that, and these kind of conversations continue. I really am kind of like the shepherd here. I am not the lawyer, as I said before to Ben. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not necessarily the negotiator, but I try to keep things moving along. I try to, when something gets hung up, we try to help shake it loose, try to make sure that we continue, that we don't forget. I'm shepherding a couple different sort of agreements right now, and they are taking a very long time. They take a really long time. It's just because
It's been 50 years. I think we can wait another year.
well, it's just also just, you know, if we have a small legal team, they have to deal with not just agreements, but everything that happens in our parks across the city. During the summertime, everything kind of shifts to summer-only servicing, giving as many services to the public as possible, and that includes our legal team that has to deal with, every single issue that comes up when people are using our pools and beaches and things like that. And so it just kind of takes a while, but I'm always happy to come back. I'm really haven't come to this board anytime, but you can always reach out if you feel like it's been a while. And if, this isn't going to happen, but if you feel like you've been ghosted by people or something like that, just give us a call. We can check in, see where things are at, and we'll just move along. And, I think that we'll continue here.
Any other questions from members online, Chris or Ritu? No? Let me open up to participants. Can you guys see?
I love the garden. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Ritu. I don't think, do we have anybody? No, I think, all right, well, thanks. Before Commissioner.
I have a question for Tricia on a totally different subject, but.
Yeah, no,
that's appropriate.
I want to open up to that.
Can I-
She's here there. Yes, please. I let her preface your question.
Okay, thank you. So at the risk of because I've already taken up an hour of your time, but I will selfishly take up a little bit more of it, because I'm not going to leave this board tonight without acknowledging at least two other massive elephants that have
Thank you.
shaken my world in the last week. One is that you probably heard that Commissioner Donahue is planning on leaving our agency at the end of the month. Transitions are always tough, but I gathered my team together, and the person besides me who had been there the least amount of time was clocking in around 16 years at the agency. And so my team has seen many transitions, and truly Parks is an agency that has a core essential operational function, and our work continues. Commissioner Donahue I'm sad because she was the person who hired me. I very much like her, and I love the culture that she that she focused on, which was really creating a level of compassion in our agency and being very competent at what we're doing, and really fighting on behalf of Parks. It's time for her in so many ways on a personal level, and I'm just very sad to see her go. But our work continues, and so as much as I can emphasize from me to all of you, I just want to tell you that our work is continuing. Our borough particularly, and I just told you about all of the maintenance and operations folks, all of the recreation folks, all of our green thumb folks. We all know that this summer is going to be insane, and we're all focused on preparing for that and getting ourselves in fighting shape and making sure that we're ready to go for the summertime. So you should continue to reach out to me. Steve's here. You should continue to reach out to Therese Flores, who's on the call, even though she's out sick today and she shouldn't be on the call.
Yeah.
She's here. I can't believe that she's here. I thought you were out. You were crazy for being here. Stop doing that. You should have, I've always said this, but really for Parks, I'm not going to speak for other agencies, but for Parks, we are not a faceless agency. You should have multiple points of contact. You should know that we're kind of continuing to do our work, and that's not going to change. And frankly, most of my team, save for me, has been through this thing many times over. So they were like, yeah, okay, let's keep on going. They're like, let's keep on going. So they are pumped and ready to go. So I just want to say that, but if you have any other questions around that, I'm happy to talk about it. And then,
You want to talk about the commission?
and then I have a
Question when you're done.
Sure. And then the other piece, which is just really good news, is if you saw or read at least the mayor's announcement around the budget, you'll see that he announced that we received $52 million for Tony D'Appolito, which is incredible. Specifically, the money is really towards, and I'm really happy to say that it's towards what the board requested, which was outdoor pool access. That is something that we're not getting at 388 Hudson, and something that we've been eager to try to see bringing back online over here. I don't have much more information at this point. I can talk to you more about it if you have specific questions and try to answer them the best I can. This is my first kind of budget go around. So in so many ways we just got hit with a lot of information this week. So we're a little slow at just trying to digest all of that information and understand what the scope is, understand what next steps are. We are trying to move ahead as quickly as possible because ultimately I know I know how frustrating it is that this community has been without a pool, an outdoor pool for so long, and I shudder to think about how long it's gonna take for us to build a new outdoor pool, for this community, but we're trying to move as quickly as possible. And as soon as I have more substantive updates there, I'm happy to bring them to you.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
I guess I'm just trying to get my head around this process. Where do we go from here? I mean, you've got a template.
Oh, yeah.
You've got a template.
Oh, for
The next steps, yeah.
We got-
Yeah, so the garden, we have a template, so the process is that we start just having our kind of negotiation talks together. It takes a while though, because we give everybody enough time to read over templates, to have to ask questions, to go into more detail. It's, it really, we don't have like a really, I don't have a real firm timeline, besides the fact that I'll tell you that that for the majority of the other ones that I've seen kind of go through, it generally takes a year, ish. So I'm happy to give any sort of updates if you would like to when it comes to that, but a lot of the updates will probably be, we sent over a draft to the garden group and they're reviewing it, or the garden group sends it over to us and it's in the queue for parks to review, or that sort of thing. So those are the kind of go back and forth pieces to it. But I will say that, you know, that stuff is also, I'm sugarcoating it because it's tough. It's tough to you know, to try to say you can't do this, or you can do this, or now you have to do this way, or now, you know, maybe, or can we carve out something that's a little bit more unique for this space? Like, those are tough considerations to make. They take a lot of time to get Pat to go through our legal general counsel and that sort of thing. So it takes some time. Frederica had a question too.
Sure, okay. Yeah, Frederica, go ahead.
Sorry, about the $52 million.
Yes, ma'am.
I got the information about it through something that Andrew Berman sent out. So I don't know if it's the exact language or his interpretation of the language. But it says $51.8 million for the reconstruction, that's a vague word, of the historic Dapolita Recreation Center to fully fund the project, including a fully accessible pool, which we knew about, a pool house building, which we had heard about, a new indoor recreation center, which baffled me, and the preservation of the iconic Keith Haring mural, which we knew about. So part one is, what does it mean, a new indoor recreation center? And where in the budget is the money for the recreation center for 388 if we're already budgeting for this project?
Yeah, I think that I'm still learning about this myself, and to be fair, I think that was language that was taken from the press release, but not necessarily maybe written into the budget formally yet, which hasn't been adopted. But my best guess here is that this, well, to be clear, this money is going to Tony Dapolito site, not to 388.
Right.
Even though the language of that press release implies that it was going to 388 because of the new recreation center component there. I believe that was a mistake not on Andrew's part, but I think that it was a mistake in the press release that, well, like, maybe kind of conflated those two, because in so many ways we do think about both 388 and Tony Dapp as being like these two pillars of recreational activity. We have everything
Complementary.
Definitely complementary.
Yeah.
So I think, maybe it's not a mistake, and I would never want to suggest that, but I do think that the language was kind of tough to misunderstand. And I too have raised those same exact questions that you had, Frederica. To be super clear, the money that is going, the 52 million or 51.8, whatever that is going to Tony Dapolito on the site, on that corner. It is primarily looking at that pool, trying to bring outdoor pool access back. And in order to do that, it's going to require a new pool building. We need a building that will provide locker rooms, bathrooms, support for the pumps, all those kind of components to it. So that's really as far as we are at right now. I don't have any kind of deeper pieces to that. 388, which is good. I'm glad you're bringing it up. It's kind of funny because they're two projects, but they're also so connected. So it's 6 to 1, half a dozen of the other, but 388, that RFP is out there. We have 2 more weeks until May 23rd, I think, or something like that, to go until it closes. I am so excited about that moving ahead, and then you'll probably hear next from that once it closes. We can't really speak about that because, again, those private negotiations around the developer decisions and that sort of thing. HPD is involved in that. You really want to talk about complicated, that's that one. But we anticipate that early in 2026, I'm hoping by like January, February, we'll be able to then do a community input process, and a designer will be selected. I hope by that point, I hope I'm remembering this correctly, but I believe at that point for 388, that then we can move that one kind of along in that process.
But to date, there is no funding for it, correct?
No.
That's part of the RFP.
There is some funding, but I can't really speak to how much right now because it depends on what the bids come in for and what the proposals are. So I'm frankly just not, I don't have information yet on like what parks will be contributing to that project, because I have to wait for those proposals to come in. I really don't know what's going to come in. I'm not even privy to that information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question about rat abatement.
Okay.
So at my Committee of Human Services, we had a presentation from DOHMH about their rat abatement program, which consists mostly of informing people, inspecting, and issuing violations.
Yes.
But what they told us was that the tree pits are actually the responsibility not of the property owner, but of the city.
Yeah.
And that Parks is supposed to take care of them, but DOHMH helps with that because Parks is understaffed. So since I happen to be someone who has a house and a tree pit, and I take very good care of my garbage, and I was issued a warning, and the reason I get a warning is because I keep my area clean, but there are rats living in the tree pit, right? Which is how it is for all of the village, because none of us have, lush gardens with garbage hanging out in the front. So I guess my point is our committee is probably gonna pass a resolution that asks for prioritization to be given to extermination rather than just the issuing of penalties.
I have some good news for you.
Yeah.
You know when the money has come in?
I get a cat.
She got you a cat.
Okay, in the preliminary budget, we were given a new line item for a dedicated rat abatement unit just for tree pits.
Yay!
Even better,
Wow.
of all the boroughs, of all the people that work in the agency, our guys are some of the best, and we've been selected. Manhattan, one of our own, has been selected to lead this initiative for the city, which is awesome.
I'm so happy I asked this question because that is a wonderful answer.
Yeah.
So as we go into
It is really good.
restaurant season.
So you're
thank
gonna,
you.
so very soon, we respond to 311 now? Or what's gonna happen with this?
Well, the unit is in the process of being created.
Got
So it doesn't exist right now.
That's right.
Okay.
At some point, by the end of the summer,
Okay.
that unit should be in place. And we will then be in a position to respond directly to complaints about tree pits, rats and tree pits.
Very much.
I don't think that we're issuing warrants or summonses.
DOHMH.
No, we don't.
We don't.
DOHMH.
So like Parks is like gonna go out and like tree. It is a very unpleasant process, by the
No,
way.
I know.
It's
Because I'm paying someone privately to do it. It's not
Yes.
very nice.
It's outrageous. And I can't believe, I'm not gonna talk about it, but
No, we're not gonna talk about that.
but what's amazing is that we do have this funding coming in for a citywide. So this is another one of those citywide things, even though it's gonna take Manhattan because Manhattan's the best. Manhattan, our little team is going to be responding to citywide kind of pieces to this.
With the additional staff.
With additional staff, that's true, but Danny's leading it, which is my guy. So they're gonna lead it, and we'll be treating those tree pits.
That's great, because
Yeah.
I get a violation because there is rat poop around my very well-sealed garbage can.
Sure.
But the only reason they're there is because they walk over from the tree pit.
Yeah,
So, okay, thank you very much.
yeah, very exciting.
One rat related thing, Community, Councilmember Botcher is doing a walkthrough of Bleecker Playground, Bleecker Park with Parks and DOH-MH.
Yes.
Discuss RAD issues. You ready? Mark your calendar. Wednesday, May 21st at 3 PM.
Yes, confirming, and thank you, Nicole Barth, who I saw is on this
Yes.
too. Yes, confirming that Councilmember Botcher's office has been in close contact with us about this stuff. Oh, look at, there's Nicole.
Yes, Wednesday, May 21st.
We are also, by the way, starting the partial renovation of that playground,
Yes.
funded by Councilmember Bodger,
Right.
on June the 16th.
Oh, that's-
On or, let's say on or about June the 16th. And can I report on another
Yes,
project?
please,
Yeah,
Dan, thank
tell
you
us,
for
what are you
coming
doing?
and, yeah.
It was the Merchants House Museum was referred to earlier, and there's been a project in the pipeline for that building for quite a while involving the facade, roof repairs, stoop reconstruction, some street tree pruning as well. That project is now scheduled to begin on or about next Wednesday, May the 14th.
And what exactly are you guys doing at the playground?
At Bleecker Playground, we are replacing play equipment, safety surface, some pavement, taking care of some of the horticulture, but mostly focused on the play equipment and safety surface.
We had a
You
meeting.
know,
And providing accessibility into the sandbox area.
when I grew up across the street from there, and when it was built, I was 5 years old, and my parents told me they were building a park for me. So I went into the park and tried to kick kids out because I told them it was my park.
So cute.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we now have to go back.
Yes, yeah.
Because
Unravel that.
the damage back then. But I'm sorry that it's taken us that long. But
That is a law.
as Tricia referred to, it takes us a long time to get around to doing things. So that was when you were 5.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, it's been 70 years. Sorry, it's been that long, but
Thank you for coming, Chief of Staff Simon. Any other questions?
Nicole.
Oh, there's Nicole. Yeah, can we turn on Nicole?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for letting me pop on here. First of all, Susanna, that was like the cutest story I've ever heard in my life. Bleecker Playground. I just want to say it's very disappointing, and I spoke to Angie yesterday, but we had to cancel the walkthrough with the commissioner and with Councilmember Eric Botcher, but we did not cancel the walkthrough. So Parks, DOH-MH, and the constituent, and also I alerted CB2 in our office. We're still going to go over because rats wait for no one, and we can't really wait for the schedule to open up again, but we're still looking into it. There's a lot of activity, as everyone knows, with the playground and Bleecker Park, and also right across the street at the smaller beds. So that's why we're going there.
Sorry about that, Nicole. If it wasn't on my part.
What?
It was, but Eric, sorry, Tricia, Eric, we had to cancel. So I told Angie yesterday, and I said that, I would still love if, I think Teresa's still going to come, and Max. So we will have Parks present, and we will have DOH-MH present, so we can provide reports back to you and to Eric and so forth. Sorry about that.
Thanks. All right, I'd like to go to the second topic.
Should we have to say
What?
goodbye and thank you?
Yeah, you guys are welcome to stay. You can head out.
I'll be in contact with you guys soon about this.
Thank you for attending.
Yes, thank
Good to
you.
see you guys.
Thank you for coming.
You know,
And thanks for all that you do.
yes, thank you. Lexi, thanks for
And I
bearing
need
with
to
us.
ask you some irrigation questions.
Other. Please,
Rich?
yeah, please come on over. Yes.
Do we expect to make a resolution based on this?
I'm not, would it be beneficial to you, or is it not necessary?
We're not asking for one now. I don't think so.
Thank you.
Also, I don't think we have a quorum either, so it might be
Cool.
tough. Yeah. All right, Lexi, please come over. Let me introduce you.
Eddie has a very nice tie on.
Yes. thanks for
Eddie was-
coming up, Eddie.
He has a tie on.
No, he
Usually I see him, he's wearing a wrinkled.
He dresses up. Yeah, all right, so, It's Alexander.
Wow.
This is Alexander. We should, goes by Lexi. Oh, right.
Oh, you're Alexi.
Yes, he's Lexi. He's coming to us, Partnership for Parks. He's got it on his shirt there.
Yeah.
And he had asked to come and talk to about a specific thing, but please give some context and talk about your role in.
I can talk right here. Can everyone hear me? Okay, okay. I'm gonna share my screen because I made a PowerPoint. Let's see, did that work? Can we share?
The way to do is you use the green button,
Yep.
and then you click on your link, yep, and then you share.
See if that
And this is by Wizardry. Of course, it's gonna be-
See if I can do. Sorry, guys, one sec.
There we go. Coming up.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
You're good.
Great. Thank you. So yes, my name's Lexi. I'm also a Parks employee. I wanted to take this time. Thank you, Community Board, for inviting me to speak. I am talking, I guess, in a way to switch gears. Partnerships for Parks is also with the Parks Department, but as the commissioner said, there's a big umbrella with different divisions. So all of these things that we've talked about so far are very important and maybe abstract and, you know, lots multifaceted. But what I specialize in my division is really bringing it down to the community, as it has in my title, of like you and me, and what can we do pluralistically to move the needle in some ways or put some things in motion. So I'm specifically, in this case, that's larger, but specifically we're going to get really into the community, and I have Minetta and Downing playgrounds to talk about. The fun thing that the commissioner knows about as well is we have our annual planting weekend. Partnerships for Parks has a fund where we receive plants. Community Board 2 is going to participate in one of said events. It is a week from this Saturday, so next Saturday at 12 p.m. It's open to the public. You're welcome to volunteer. I have those plants listed. We went really specifically for native plants. The gardens, if you're familiar with Minetta Playground, are mostly on the 6th Ave of America's side, but there's a few other areas and maybe the outside. So again, this is a free event. There is a QR code on that flyer that takes you to the things. It's also on the Parks Department website. So that is just something to start with, like what's next? This is one way to get involved and, you know, move that needle and bring something to the park. It was just, I figured there's milkweed. Yeah, so those are some of the plants we have.
Important for the monarch butterfly.
Yeah.
Milkweed specifically, so the things you'll see and plant at the event. So I definitely wanted to, like, even just first, you know, very basic. I'm happy to put my contact in the chat if you want to hit it up. So I just want to put that in. But let me also kind of now scale back for just a second to talk about, besides this event, how does this all come together? So as you see, Partnerships for Parks. Sort of, again, I'm always trying to connect with what the commissioner's saying here, and that there's a public-private partnership. There's different agreements. So there's a nonprofit arm of ours called the City Parks Foundation, and it partners with the Parks Department. And the way I tend to explain it is Parks has the real estate, right? These are the parks and operations within the Parks Department. Does, you know, cares for the parks and, you know, with the staffing, and City Parks Foundation does the activation of the park. So like sports programs or really like funding to really activate the parks. When I say activate, like really get people in there, using the park, reimagining how it looks. And altogether that comes together with partnerships for parks. So I look at both. I work with the parks, and then also I try to think alongside with the communities as that partnership.
So wait, I'm sorry, you're a
Yes.
public-private partnership,
Yes.
but your email is a parks department, but your funding, I mean, is there, when you say it's public-private, what's the private part?
The private part
Is
is,
there an independent board or independent budget or?
there is.
Oh, okay.
yes, The City Parks Foundation.
The City Parks Foundation is the independent board under which partnerships for parks operate.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, no, of course, you're welcome. So that's just a little kind of, besides that event at Minetta Playground, that's a little like who we are, what's this about? This is a very quick, usually when we have a parks event, or we call them an It's My Park, as you maybe saw on the flyer. These are the general kind of things we do. In our case, we're going to do horticulture for the Minetta Playground aspect. So litter pickup, well, and I'll also emphasize that my divisions brings the supplies, mulch where needed, project coordination, outreach, like I'm doing here today, to really bring awareness for these events. So just to kind of give that kind of scope. And why I bring up that scope is I want to, or really like there's an interest in my mind, and I think the agency maybe, of Downing Street Playground. I've went and looked at it a few times. I knew with Therese, who's on the call, I've worked with her and someone who would work here in the gardens. That wasn't able to work long-term. I don't want to be too forthright, but also not sugar-coated, as you guys might know. There's a lot of challenges with Downing Street Playground. I walked by out of curiosity 2 days ago and it's locked off.
Yeah,
For the challenges.
well,
I can explain.
Which the entrance was locked off.
It's along the 6th Ave one. I saw it. Yeah, it was
There's the Carmine, isn't there an entrance? There's the entrance on Carmine.
there. Yes. It's this entrance, like I'm kind of facing it as you, like if I'm where I'm standing, I took that picture.
Yeah, the other entrances.
So while it's open in that case, so I'll try to jump into some things. Like I said, earlier in April, there's a division within Parks that coordinates with Department of Mental Health and Hygiene and Department of Homeless Services, and they do a lockstep program to remove encampments while simultaneously trying to provide services, provide services for shelters and also substance abuse. So that was done earlier in April. But those encampments do come back. So that is a one aspect that the Parks Department does, utilize. And so I'm trying to think of a project proposal, and I want to go hand in hand with what the Parks does. But my job, besides mentioning volunteer projects that might be out there, is also to look at creating a group or encouraging a group, or really coaching individuals who might want to put it one way, adopt the park, like the It's My Park. How can the Parks Department in my division empower others to lead something? So the immediate project proposal that I've thought of for this is, and Therese, not to put Therese on the spot, but I've talked with Teresa about it, is I would love to trim those hedges lower. I think that can be a very small step towards just starting to improve the sightliness of the park in a way I think, and I'm here to make it a discussion. It's my thought of if you trim them down, it would improve sightlines in the park and it might discourage drug use and all other kind of things. So that's kind of the first project that I'm looking at as an idea, as something that I think is worthwhile to try. And of course, from there, there's several other things that partnerships could do in addition to that. So in my case, I'm speaking from the engagement, like here I am on the ground, kind of putting together some idea. But there's other roles that Partnerships for Parks, and as you see, CPF, the City Parks Foundation and New York City Parks, Partnerships for Parks, just to go back to that. There's technical assistance, so maybe, you know, as we start working, like I said, maybe just starting a basic is trimming those hedges. Then there's ways to maybe get grants or trainings for people who might like to be a project leader in it. Someone who also, you know, in one sense likes to get their hands dirty and is happy if I give some clippers, we'll have a, you know, it'll be fun and engaging. But someone who also likes, like I'm kind of seeing on this community board, bigger picture, right? Maybe there's grants. Could the community do advocacy to, you know, broach this sensitive topic between homeless and drug use? Could a community board broach this? And while it may be out, some, you know, parts of those are outside the scope of parks, but getting a community together to talk about it in a place like this is the way to maybe start on it. Other things I'm thinking of is I've talked to the neighborhood coordination officer. It's Officer Ephraim Can. I've brought up, you know, that he knows very well the problems in this park.
NYPD officer.
NYPD, yes, that's correct. Sorry. And I said, you know, there's challenges in that park. If I were to bring a volunteer group, could you post an officer or two there just to be an additional presence? And he said, give me a day and a time. I'll send an officer. So I am, you know, like, I'm not trying to say this is an easy process, but this group seems great at trying to tackle difficult things. So some of it is the very, you know, immediate, like there's hands-on and maybe some pruning that can just start. But I even look back, just to go back, I love like the sculpture there in the middle. So it's a kind of fun way to use imagination. I don't know why I think of it, but I can think of poetry readings happening there. You know, it's a really beautiful sculpture and it's kind of hidden. So there's so many different ways we can activate the park, I believe.
Well, let's get people there. I think the event on May 17th will remind everyone.
Yeah, the event on May 17th is Minetta, so it's
not
there.
I thought it was both.
So I guess I'm starting by just trying to get people in the area. That one is across the street from,
yes, of course,
Minetta. I'm very much trying to be more intentional because that Downing Street playground does have some challenges. Like I said, I think part of it is hedges. I mean, and the concrete stuff is there's homeless encampments. This is something Parks is aware of and, you know, tackles. I believe that's it on my end. I can go back to why don't I leave this?
Questions? Yeah, let's turn it over to the people in the room. Let's go with Shirley first.
Nice to meet you, Shirley.
Okay, I guess I have a couple of questions. For one, right now, is there any group?
No.
No.
There was one volunteer.
Yeah.
But one way to put it is because of the aforementioned things, homelessness, and kind of he didn't feel safe going there. So
There was something that said that a nursery school makes use of it or something.
Therese wrote that. I don't.
Yeah, hi, yeah.
Of course, you know, the parents of the nursery school.
Yeah, I'll defer to Therese.
Yeah, so we have a nursery school in Downing Playground. In the back during the day when they're using it, they keep it closed just to keep some of the people who hang out in the back using drugs out of the playground while they're there using it. And it's just something that we've had to keep a close eye on, that we've worked with the precinct on to close off just that site because it helped them to deal with the bathroom side of the park. So it's being used by the nursery school. It's got challenges because of the drug use. So
Yeah.
every time we encounter that, we're closing the bathrooms and we're closing the parks. Which is the playground in the back, not the front, which is Churchill Square, which is what you're looking at now.
So then it's Churchill Square. That's,
And the playground
That's
is
my
behind that building,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not seeing the playground or the building,
Right.
that its race was referring to.
so it should say Winston Churchill Square, I believe. So that's
Accessible.
my fault.
From Carmine,
I
right?
am super confused about the relationship between Partnership for Parks and Parks here, because we have Therese on the phone. Normally Parks would address that. So I'm not quite sure what the purpose is. Is it to try to get us to help create a local friends group?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and have you approached any of the nearby block associations, like Bleecker Bedford Block Association? Because that would be the first line of attack.
I haven't really found those yet.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
perhaps we can
partially-
steer you to those.
Yes.
There are local block associations. I think also the West Village bid. I don't think it doesn't go down that far, I don't think. But you should talk to them. You should talk to Zach Owens at the West Village bid.
I would love that.
I've been talking to Zach, and he has wanted to work on that back area, and we were talking about maybe, having a way to activate that area for volunteer tools and things in a way that's closed off. So we're still looking into it with him, because he also wants to treat the rats in the neighborhood. So he has his own Burrow RX machine, and he's really interested in helping out Demo, Little Red, and this park.
Yeah, I think Little Red's another group that.
And I think he's offering to give you information about.
That would be,
block association.
okay,
Yeah.
right down that.
Downing Street
That's
has,
where you want to go.
Yes.
Okay,
Downing Street has a block.
thank you.
What's that?
I think Downing Street has a block. There's some,
Oh, I didn't see the last four digits.
You know what, just get in
7757.
touch with Nicole Barth directly,
Yes.
and she will, and
Thank
if
you.
you need help to get in touch with her.
yeah, what about the Little Red community?
Yeah, I think
There's
you're
a
right.
little- I mean, there's a lot of stuff right
Little
there,
Red is
and
right
I'm
near
guessing
there,
Nicole will know
you
better
Well,
than me.
so Little Red is helping us with the park outside their school,
Yeah,
It's
sure.
Little Red Park.
Little Red Square.
Yeah, 30 people showed up to the regional day of service, and we lowered the fences. I don't know if you've been there recently, and we cleaned out all the dead plants. We're going to add some new plants to it, and it's looking a lot better now that the fences aren't so high.
April 25th, yeah.
I'm very humbled. Thank you for those tips. I mean, yes, so just to make sure, yes, I'm with Parks as well. But I'm
So
in
this meeting is to activate a local group that can take over
yeah,
moving the park forward. That isn't the Parks Department, in other words, that can
Would
advocate.
would
for
assist the Parks Department.
parks. Okay,
yes,
We're not talking about taking over.
right.
it's partnering,
Work together.
Yeah.
partnerships for parks,
Yeah,
yes.
we can help spread the word with, if you have the
flock.
yeah, we can.
Sure, I have those.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess the block association.
Brought some of these kind of
Yes,
To activate the park.
cool things that talk about
Whatever, not.
just the different ways we.
Oh, good, you can bring those to the.
Thank you.
You can bring those.
So
Right,
that's really it. I just love to hear ideas. If there's stuff you want to talk about, brainstorm. I guess I have Nicole's number, Mark. Thank you.
great, appreciate you coming, and
I will, right, so I stop.
thanks, everyone. Before,
Lexi, did you get the phone number for Nicole?
Yes.
yeah,
564-775. Thank you, Nicole, in advance.
Do you have her email address?
We have it.
Okay.
We have it.
right. All right, I wanted to just move quickly into business session. Do you have your laptop?
My stopwatch?
No, your laptop. I wanted
I
to
do.
just raise Valerie's request.
Oh, okay, sure.
So, thank you guys. Just before we break up and let you go more, obviously watch the Knicks game. Then, there was Valerie, Valerie's taken
You wanna
over.
let Tricia, let them lead for
Yeah, you
this
guys,
business session?
are you, actually, I would love to hear their input too.
Okay,
Valerie has taken over was elected and has started serving as chair of the committee. She's asked each committee to, what's that?
Chair of the board.
The chair of the board, I'm sorry, chair of the board, I'm sorry, yeah. And she's asked each committee to sort of help me out here, Suzanne.
Come out with a 6-month community outlook. She would like us to have, all have more of a strategic
Committee by committee.
vision, strategic committee by committee, especially with one like parks. That is often a self-generated agenda, not necessarily, responding to the city. So we want to talk about issues that we might want to address in the coming 6 months to a year.
And so while we had you here, I thought it would be good just to see, what can we as a community board do to help any initiatives that you guys want to have, pushed or were enabled or enhanced or.
So my very first recommendation would be to use our Vital Parks tool, which I hope that you all should know about, and if you don't, then good. But essentially, you can look at your community board district just with an eye towards parks and look at all 26 different metrics of how you compare to other boards across the city. So if there are any gaps, if there are scores that you think are lower and should be higher, that would be an obvious place where you should be looking to check your own kind of parks vital scores here and look for ways to advocate. That would be my top first recommendation for that. That's the whole, thanks to Commissioner Donahue. That was kind of where she really wanted to put more data in the hands of community boards and of New Yorkers. So that's the first one. The second one, and Lexi did a great job presenting, but essentially, I heard in other community boards, I've seen people trying to get like a friends group in every park and every open space. It's nice to have those local groups because they can create and activate and create volunteer opportunities. It just engages more New Yorkers. We have a whole slew of programming, but it's, the It's My Park Day events are just incredible, and they are just giving more people an opportunity to build that relationship with their parks. So another pace would be like to look at all of your parks and open spaces, and do you have an active group in every single one? If not, why not? A very savvy person could also look at all of your park spaces and see when the last time a capital improvement has been made. Have all of your parks and open spaces been invested in the last 5 years or undergone some sort of capital, or do you have a plan there? Or do you have any parks or open spaces that have not been touched for over 20 years, which we have a lot of those, in which case that should take a priority in terms of your advocacy and that sort of thing. So on the capital front. Such good suggestions.
Great, yeah.
Thank you.
Tell me about the community board.
So, those would be like the capital investments. You could look at playground associates and that sort of thing too. That's like a little bit of a niche thing, but during the summertime, we pay people to be stationed in some of our parks, particularly when we don't have a rec center around, and I don't actually have one close to me, but we like those playground associates because our kids in the summertime need places to be engaged. They need safe spaces. And so we pay for somebody who can be engaging with those kids in our parks on a regular basis. Also, and oftentimes we give out lunch in those spaces as well. So which parks of yours have playground associates? That may not be actually on Vital Parks. I don't know if that was, but I think it's a little bit of a niche thing that you can start looking into, or you can ask us about. Those would be where I would start with this. I'd look at your parks vital signs. I'd look at your capital projects, what's in the capital queue. I'd look at some of those other maybe playground associate pieces and start there in terms of try
to find friends groups.
It would be like finding the gaps is where I would start. Oh, and then the friends group, sorry. Because that's like activation, that's capital improvements, and then all those other kind of markers there. You can look at public restrooms and you can see how many of your, I think that's in there, but parks holds, you can look at how far is it for your residents to access a public restroom in a park. Would be super interesting to take a look at and see. Those would be where I would start if I were you.
Thank you for that.
Hey, Trish.
Presumably, we're going to have a number of sessions about Tony Dow and maybe 388, right?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, we have.
Scoping sessions.
I can take a look at that.
That's going to come up. Yeah.
I would flag for you that Playground of the Americas is one of our parks that we've been talking about that has not been touched in over 20 years. So please put that on top of your advocacy list, because that's something that we've that's in our short list too.
But we put it on our
Yeah.
community assessment.
We need that.
We've been discussing
Good.
that.
Frederica, I think had a question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Trish, I don't know if this rings a bell with you, but in 2000 and maybe it does with you, Steve. In 2016, there was an initiative called Parks Without Borders. And I believe the initial funding was $50 million, maybe 5 parks, 10 parks. Has that languished? Has it gone anywhere? Is it something that, is it?
It was basically it was funded, it was basically a one-time initiative. And we had 2 parks in Manhattan that was selected for that program, Seward Park on the Lower East Side and Jackie Robinson Park in Harlem. And so both of those projects were successfully completed. But a lot of the Parks Without Borders principles have carried over into the capital project process. So that, efforts to, lower the heights of perimeter fencing is something that's was a basic principle of that program. That's been absorbed into the regular capital design process.
All right, but the principles of it, just as you say, the lower the lower fence is something that I think about every time I walk by Jefferson Market Garden. It has one entrance. I kind of alluded to it. I didn't want to overwhelm them, but if they had more entrances to that park, they would have more pathways and they could have more benches. And the issue of seating in the park is really in the garden.
We can take a look at that, and maybe we have the ability to bring in some additional benches.
Right, but that's also what I was getting at when I was encouraging them to think about a master plan, because it's a gorgeous park. It's exquisite, but it hasn't changed since it opened, and the fence is 50 years old. So, thank you.
Thank you. And any other comments? I want to wrap it up. Thank you. Any other points? Please send them to me if any other ideas come up or any other ways we can assist with that. I like that. It's finding the gaps, but I think this concept of using the data more generally is a good one.
I will also say, I think you have 2 questions there by off-leash hours for many dog owners in the community. How can we bring more actual nature into the park, starved neighborhoods, not manicure gardens for natural areas, those 2. Good comments. I would say that for vital parks, I do think we have dog runs as one of the vital signs there. So you could look at how many, I don't think we don't get any deeper than that, but you can look at how many of your residents in your community ward have access to a 10-minute or are 10 minutes away from a dog run. So you can see if that's something that is of interest. And then when it comes to natural areas, I agree. Manhattan in general, we have the least amount of natural areas versus more formal parkland spaces. Natural areas, there's actually only one. There's Inwood Hill Park, which is our only natural. Am I wrong?
Well, we have a very interesting site just down the block here.
Yes.
The Time Landscape Garden.
Oh.
It's been designed to be a natural area that emulates what the Manhattan looked like in the 1600s.
Oh.
So that's a natural area which some people think should be changed, but it's very deliberately been kept in its natural state.
Yeah, and it's got lots of natives from Wilhelmina. It's really a beautifully maintained little space with beautiful interests. It's lost a lot of trees, but it's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, and
Had a fence around it for a while.
Yes, yeah, and in terms of the dog runs, what our Vital Parks data I'm pretty sure does not take into account are the dog runs located within this community in Hudson River Park.
Right.
So
It does not count into those, yes.
We've talked a
Also-
little before about having.
Her question was specifically off leash. It's a running commentary. There was a discussion around is there time in, for Washington Square Park where dogs could be off leash as they are in Central Park? It's a topic that comes up.
Oh, that's, okay, that's a tough one. I don't really have an answer for that one. I'm gonna have to, but I can take it back and we can look at it. Washington Square Park is, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And then I see a question about JJ Walker. The one thing I will say is that really we don't like to see our dogs on synthetic turf fields. It's really tough with those synthetic turf fields. We want to try to make sure that they just stay as good as they can be for as long as they can be. And it's just really tough to have dogs on there, which is why we try to encourage other spaces for that. It's just the dog urine and things like that really can eat away faster at the product, and it's tough to replace that stuff. So
Actually,
We had
while you're here, can
We
you,
had some people come to talk about Washington Square Park because they like to run their dogs off leash very early in the morning, right?
yeah, but there were
And they're not
concerns.
allowed to do that, and they wanted to know why they're not allowed to do that. And then, so there was some question that would be great to still address about,
good question.
are there off-leash places anywhere in park? We were led to believe that possibly only parks of a certain size permit off-leash at certain hours, and there are certain constraints that, Washington, but to have an answer to give to those members of the community would be helpful.
I can look into it. My guess is that it's probably accurate, like certain size, proximity to like the streets and that sort of thing is what I'm gonna guess. But I'm happy to come back and look into this a little bit more, just make a note of it so I can remember to come back. But I'm pretty sure it's proximity to the street. I'm sure it's also size of like the grassy areas there and like our ability to do that. But we can look into it and see. And I think that
definition.
Well, the general policy is that any park that has a dog run does not also provide for all dog hours. If you have a dog run, there's already a specified area where you can run your dog. You don't need to also use other areas of the park. We've already carved out an area for the dog.
Got it.
So that's the
General policy.
that's the rub when it comes to Washington Square Park.
Well, that's one of the.
We already, and we have 2 dog runs.
Yes.
For large and small dogs. And when we renovated that park, I believe we enlarged the size of the dog runs.
Yes, it was.
George Veronicus is on this call. He could probably.
I'd rather not. I want to go back to
He
the.
could probably attest to that.
You probably tell us the square footage.
Let's go back to the synthetic turf. Councilmember Marte seems to have set that as a very high priority to reopen that debate. Is there something that you can do to either resolve that so that he perhaps can work on other priorities in the neighborhood?
No, I can't control anybody, not even my own children. I think that what Councilmember Marquez, I mean, this is just me. This is not official wearing my agency stance on this, but I think that Councilmember Marte has really pointed to the certainly community members' desire to see natural areas. I too love it. To be super clear though, all of our synthetic turfs that we're installing, and even when we're replacing synthetic turfs, they're PFAS free. They're meeting a ton of kind of health and safety standards, both industry wide, but also on the state side and city side. So we do take that really seriously. Parks is definitely not in the business of trying to replace every natural area with synthetic turf. However, for many kind of organized sports, and I know some of you have kids who see this, there are many industries that actually sports that actually prefer synthetic turf because that's like the standard these days. And we're really trying to be in the business of trying to create as wide a range and serve as many people as possible, as safely as possible. Synthetic turf is like versus football, I guess football being kicking soccer, for football too. For other sports, there's just some groups that are preferring it. It's also a softer surface to land on, and it does also increase our playable hours. It's less of a maintenance headache for us, again, stretching our resources further, and really gives us more time and more places for kids to play. So it really is creating as many options as possible. We really look to the community. Also, synthetic turf is also the creme de la creme for some dog owners. They actually love it in Madison Square Park, and many places they're asking us to put it in there. kind of depends on, some people just don't like the gravel that they put in for their dogs, the dog owners like, so it kind of, it's a range. We certainly, we're engaging with council member on it and everybody else who have concerns about it. We're really trying to meet everybody's interests and needs as to the best of our ability, give as wide ranges of options as possible. But I definitely hear people who like grass. I like, who like the natural turf. I definitely get it. I love being surrounded by woods and getting hidden, like hiding away from the city sound. So I just love everybody like kind of prioritizing our parks.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's 8:30. I appreciate everyone's attention and
Thank you so much to both of you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Steve
coming.
All three of you.
Yeah, three of us.
and
Yeah.
Interest, yes.
All right,
Entries.
I'll send around the notes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for staying.
We're supposed to
around.
applaud.